I found out I'd been erased before my first coffee went cold. My name is Elena Ward, and I built this company from a two-person dream into a $20 million reality. I handled the sleepless years, the cancelled holidays, the client calls that stretched into dawn. My partner, Ethan Hale, was the voice. I was the heartbeat. And that morning, sitting across from him in our glass boardroom, I realized he had quietly replaced me in the story I wrote. The boardroom buzzed with surface-level energy, polished shoes, fake smiles, and a new acquisition agreement that glowed on the screen like a trophy. Ethan walked in late, smiling like he owned the sunlight. "Morning," he said, that practiced charm disarming the entire room. The man could lie with his tone alone. When he slid the printed contract across the table, I skimmed it the way I always did, my brain already cataloging details, figures, and clauses until something caught my eye. Clause 9b. Gone. The one clause that protected my equity if a majority buyout occurred. My breath caught as the legal text blurred for half a second. "We cleaned up redundancies," Ethan said lightly. "Legal suggestion. Legal suggestion. Only it wasn't our legal team. I knew their formatting by heart, and this wasn't it." My pulse quickened. "When did this go through?" I asked. "Last week," he replied smoothly, "while you were in Seattle." I was in Seattle finalizing the biggest client deal of the year, the one that would boost our valuation to $20 million. While I was pitching our future, he was rewriting our past. He'd fast-tracked the amendment through a small firm under his control, using my digital signature proxy from our shared authentication system. He had quietly removed me from the core structure of the company, and no one noticed because everyone trusted him to lead and me to fix. "It's just cleanup," he repeated, smiling like he was offering reassurance instead of betrayal. Around the table, no one questioned him. They nodded, unaware that they were witnessing my erasure. I didn't speak. I didn't argue. Anger would only validate his performance. Instead, I turned to the board chair and asked for a printed copy, for my records. He hesitated but complied. When the meeting ended, I left the boardroom without a word. The hallway outside felt colder, wider. The hum of printers, the murmur of assistants, all suddenly foreign. I could feel my heart beating against the silence, sharp and rhythmic, like a countdown. In my office, I closed the door, leaned against the glass, and stared out at the skyline I had helped buy floor by floor. The city didn't care who signed the contracts, it just kept moving. I sat at my desk, unlocked the drawer where I kept my binder labeled Hard Days, and flipped it open. Inside were every transfer I had ever made to save this company. A $60,000 during our lean year when payroll almost bounced. A $20,000 advanced for product development when investors delayed funding. Every dollar came from me. Every document bore my signature. I ran my hand over the pages, each one now a weapon of quiet truth. I wasn't going to let fury guide me. Fury was messy. Strategy, though, that was precise. I opened my laptop and began pulling data. I downloaded old emails, versions of the operating agreement, timestamps, every edit log that showed who authorized changes. Then I called my two department heads. I didn't tell them what happened. I simply said, "Lock down your accounts. Change nothing until you hear from me." They trusted me enough not to ask why. Next, I texted the only lawyer I knew who didn't flinch under pressure, someone who once told me, "In business, revenge isn't anger. It's accounting." I attached the contract and wrote only 4 words, "He erased me. Fix it." Within 10 minutes, she replied, "Meet me in an hour." I sat back, breathing evenly, forcing my pulse to slow. The glass walls reflected me, a woman they thought was finished. I thought about every late-night meeting Ethan had smiled through while I handled the real problems. I thought about how easily he used charm like currency. And I thought about how every system, every investor, every connection ran through accounts with my name on them. The irony almost made me laugh. He'd erased me from paper but left my fingerprints on everything else. The office phone rang once, then stopped. My email pinged. Ethan again, sending a casual message about smoothing things over. I didn't respond. He expected tears or confrontation. He expected noise. What he'd get was silence, the kind that builds pressure until it breaks concrete. When I finally stood, I looked around the office that had been my second home for a decade. The awards, the glass plaques, the framed press features, every piece built on the foundation of my invisible hours. I gathered my laptop, my binder, and the external drive where every real asset lived. As the elevator doors closed, my reflection stared back, calm, deliberate, and dangerous. They hadn't fired me, they'd freed me. Betrayal burns fast, but calculation burns clean. I stepped out into the cold morning air, the city stretching around me like an open chessboard. Ethan thought he'd removed a player. What he didn't realize was that he'd just made me the game master. The lawyer's office was smaller than I remembered, tucked behind a row of glass towers that gleamed like false promises. Her name was Rachel Kim, a corporate litigator who never smiled for free. She greeted me with a handshake that said she already knew this wasn't a consultation, it was a war. I slid the amended contract across her desk and waited while she read. Her eyes moved fast, sharp as blades. "He didn't just edit a clause," she said finally. "He rewrote your ownership structure. You're no longer a cosigner in the buyout agreement. He transferred your protective voting rights into an inactive holding company." "Meaning?" I asked. "Meaning," she said, "on paper, you're a senior consultant. A glorified employee." My throat tightened, but my voice stayed calm. "Can we undo it?" Rachel leaned back. "If we move fast, yes. But we can't scream theft, yet we have to show the board he breached fiduciary duty before we talk courtroom." Her precision was surgical. "You said you have proof of your capital contributions?" I opened the binder and handed over the receipts, bank wires, and the ledger I'd updated that morning. She flipped through the pages, pausing only to note amounts and dates. "This," she said, "is your leverage. You didn't just build the company, you financed it. If we prove his rewrite happened under false representation, you can claim controlling interest, not just restoration." Controlling interest. The words tasted foreign, powerful, dangerous. For years I'd been too loyal to imagine owning the entire company. Loyalty is the prettiest cage a partner can build. "What do we need first?" I asked. "Everything digital," Rachel said. "Version histories, authorization logs, emails showing when he initiated the changes. And your Seattle trip, any proof you were off network while this happened. That'll prove he acted behind your back." I nodded. "You'll have it by morning." She smirked faintly. "Then let's make him regret underestimating you." That night, I didn't sleep. My apartment was quiet except for the hum of the city outside, neon lights flickering across the walls like heartbeats. I poured coffee and opened my laptop, methodically tracing every step of Ethan's sabotage. The company's digital infrastructure was familiar territory. I had built half of it. Every authorization ping left a trail. Every altered document had metadata buried like fingerprints. By 2 a.m., I had a timeline: his access logs, his proxy approvals, the boutique firm's invoice dated 2 days before the clause vanished. It was all there, lined up like dominoes waiting for one push. Still, I didn't send it to Rachel immediately. I wanted to see how deep the rot went. At 8 a.m., I called our lead accountant, pretending I'd misplaced a file. His voice was nervous, too formal. "Elena, I wasn't sure if I should call you," he said. "Ethan told us you were stepping back for a while." My stomach went cold. "Did he now?" I asked softly. "Yeah, he said you wanted to focus on new ventures. He even drafted an internal memo." I thanked him, ended the call, and opened the company's internal server. There it was, a staff-wide announcement scheduled for release at noon, effective immediately. "Elena Ward will transition into an advisory role while Ethan Hale leads strategic operations into the new fiscal year." My hands hovered above the keyboard for a long second, then moved with absolute focus. I unscheduled the email and replaced it with a simple message: "Team, meeting at 2 p.m., mandatory, EW." Then I copied the metadata folder, zipped it, and encrypted it twice. By noon, I had every piece of evidence sitting on a secure drive labeled Winter Plan. At 1:58 p.m., I stood in the conference room watching employees shuffle in. Some looked confused, some nervous, some quietly loyal. Ethan arrived at 2:03, his trademark grin already rehearsed. "Elena," he said smoothly, "didn't expect you to." "Sit," I said. The room went still. "Before we begin, I continued. You should know that everything said here is being recorded. A few heads turned. Ethan's smile faltered slightly, then returned. Sure, he said, transparency is good. I let him talk first, he always did. He spoke about vision, leadership continuity, streamlined decision-making, the same buzzwords that had fooled investors. When he finished, I opened my laptop and projected the document logs on the screen. This, I said evenly, is the record of every modification made to our acquisition file last week. Notice the timestamps. Notice the access key. Ethan's color drained as his initials appeared in the metadata. You used my digital proxy while I was on a flight to Seattle. You authorized changes removing my ownership rights. You called it cleanup. I paused, letting the silence grow teeth. That's not cleanup. That's fraud. He tried to laugh it off, muttering about miscommunication, but the team had already seen enough. One of the senior managers leaned forward. Ethan, did you actually alter the contract? His jaw tightened. I adjusted language, under legal advice. Not our legal, I said. I clicked again, showing the boutique firm's payment confirmation. A private contractor, paid from company funds without disclosure. A ripple went through the room. Years of silent loyalty were suddenly visible on every face, people remembering unpaid overtime, broken promises, missing bonuses. For the first time, Ethan couldn't charm his way out. I closed the laptop gently. You'll receive notice from counsel tomorrow morning. Until then, consider yourself suspended from all company accounts. The room stayed quiet as he stood, pale and furious. He muttered something about temporary misunderstanding and stormed out. No one followed. When the door closed, I exhaled slowly. One of the engineers whispered, "Is he fired?" I looked at her, steady. "Not yet," I said. "But soon." That night, I sent Rachel everything, the logs, the recordings, the invoices. Within hours, she had drafted a temporary restraining motion preventing Ethan from accessing company assets until a hearing. It wasn't victory yet, but it was movement. By morning, Ethan's lawyer called mine to discuss reconciliation. I almost smiled. Men like Ethan don't apologize, they negotiate survival. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to the office early, unlocked the doors myself, and watched the sunrise spill across the empty desks. I thought about every sacrifice I'd made to keep this place alive, the weekends lost, the friends I'd pushed aside, the faith I'd had in someone who turned betrayal into strategy. Then I thought about something Rachel had said. If you stay calm long enough, the truth always runs out of places to hide. She was right. The truth was already running. 3 weeks after that meeting, Ethan Hale vanished from the office like a ghost everyone had agreed to forget. His name still sat on the company letterhead, but no one said it out loud anymore. His access cards were disabled, his parking space reassigned, and his voice, once booming with charisma, became just another rumor whispered near the elevators. In the silence he left behind, the company began to breathe differently, quieter, steadier, almost grateful. I didn't celebrate. I worked. Power doesn't shout when it's real. It simply rearranges the room. Rachel and I had filed a motion with the business tribunal, not for damages, but for full ownership under breach of fiduciary duty. It was an audacious move, one that required confidence, documentation, and perfect timing. Timing, I had learned, was just another word for patience weaponized. While the legal wheels turned, I focused on fortifying the empire he'd tried to steal. I met with every client personally, explained nothing, promised stability, and delivered results. The more I produced, the less they cared about the ghost of Ethan Hale. Contracts renewed. Revenue stabilized. The press, sensing drama, reached out for comment. I gave them none. Silence is oxygen in corporate chaos. Let them suffocate on curiosity. Behind the scenes, Ethan fought quietly. He sent intermediaries, brokers, even a mutual investor, all carrying polite offers of settlement. Each one began with flattery and ended with fear. Think about your reputation, Elena. You don't want this to get ugly. They didn't understand. It was already ugly. I had just stopped apologizing for the mess. The hearing date arrived on a rainy Thursday. The conference chamber wasn't glamorous gray carpet, flickering lights. and the faint smell of stale coffee, but to me it looked like a stage. Ethan sat across the table with his new lawyer, a man who looked expensive but uncertain. Rachel sat beside me, posture relaxed, expression surgical. When the tribunal officer entered, we all stood. The formality didn't calm me, it centered me. After introductions, Rachel presented our claim: evidence that Ethan had used my digital proxy to alter ownership terms without consent, proof of undisclosed legal payments from company accounts, and full financial records showing I had invested personal funds exceeding $140,000 over 6 years to maintain solvency. The officer listened in silence, flipping pages. Ethan's lawyer objected once, half-heartedly, then again when Rachel projected the metadata timeline showing his signature appearing during my flight hours from Seattle. The timestamp glowed on the screen like a wound. When it was Ethan's turn, he leaned forward, rehearsed charm barely holding. "There was never intent to deceive," he said smoothly. "Miss Ward and I had agreed verbally that she wanted to take a step back from day-to-day leadership. I simply formalized it." Rachel didn't interrupt. She waited, then leaned in just enough to let silence stretch before speaking. "You claim verbal consent. Do you have a recording?" Ethan hesitated. "No, but do you have an email, text message, memo, or any written proof?" "No," he said again. Rachel turned to the officer. "We do have this." She tapped the screen, bringing up an audio recording the boardroom meeting where I asked when he submitted the revisions. His voice echoed through the room. "Last week. Legal recommended it." "Not we agreed." "Legal recommended it." The officer nodded slowly, his pen tapping once. "Proceed," he said. Rachel concluded simply, "Miss Ward is the only individual who kept this company solvent during its formative years. Her partner's unauthorized actions constitute not only breach but calculated deception. We seek full transfer of equity to Miss Ward as sole owner and managing director." Then she stopped talking. No dramatics, no flourish. Just truth arranged like evidence. The officer took 23 minutes to deliberate. It felt like an eternity suspended in fluorescent hum. I didn't look at Ethan. I looked at my hands. They weren't shaking. They hadn't shaken once since the day he tried to erase me. When the officer returned, he cleared his throat. "The tribunal finds in favor of the plaintiff, Miss Ward. All contested ownership transfers are void. Effective immediately, controlling interest reverts to her at 100%. The words hit like the quietest explosion. No applause, no gasp, just the sound of a pen scratching across paper, turning betrayal into record. Ethan's lawyer began whispering frantic damage control. Ethan sat back, pale, eyes unfocused. I stood, thanked the officer, and left without looking back. The victory didn't feel like triumph, it felt like oxygen. Outside, rain streaked down the glass walls of the building. The city lights blurred through it, gold and gray. Rachel joined me under the awning, closing her umbrella. "Congratulations, CEO," she said softly. I exhaled, a sound between relief and disbelief. "Feels different than I thought." "That's because it's real," she said. Then she handed me a folded paper, the tribunal's stamped judgment. "Frame it, or burn it. Either way, you won." Back at the office, the silence was almost reverent. Employees looked up as I entered, waiting to see what kind of leader I would be now that I had no one above me. I didn't give a speech. I simply said, "We rebuild quietly." Heads nodded. That was enough. Over the next week, Ethan's name disappeared from the website, the stationery, the system access list. Every trace of him erased cleanly, almost poetically. And when I signed the new annual report, just my name appeared on the last page: Elena Ward, founder and CEO. That night, I stayed late, sitting alone in the boardroom that once tried to bury me. The city stretched out beyond the glass, endless, indifferent. I poured a glass of whiskey and opened my laptop. My inbox was full of congratulatory messages from clients and contacts who suddenly always believed in me. Hypocrites, most of them, but useful hypocrites. I drafted a single press statement: leadership transition complete. New chapter ahead. No drama, no history, no Ethan. Just the truth dressed as simplicity. When I hit send, I felt something shift, not relief, not vindication. Something quieter. Ownership doesn't feel like revenge when you've earned it. It feels like finally being allowed to breathe your own air. I closed my laptop, leaned back in the chair, and whispered to the empty room, "We're done." But the echo that came back didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like the beginning of everything. 3 months later, the company looked unrecognizable. The walls had been repainted, the office plants replaced, and the name on the door that once read Ward and Hale Partners now bore just one word in silver letters: Ward. People still paused when they walked past it, maybe out of habit, maybe out of awe. I didn't smile when I saw it for the first time. I just stood there and let the silence fill the space that used to belong to both of us. Silence had followed me since that day, but it no longer felt empty. It felt earned. Every morning, I arrived before anyone else, made my coffee in the quiet kitchen, and watched the sunrise reflect off the glass towers across the 2 Street. For the first time in years, it was my reflection staring back at me, no partner, no shadow. Just me. The days were longer now, but lighter. Without Ethan's noise, the company began to hum differently. Decisions came faster. Meetings ended sooner. People stopped performing and started producing. I didn't talk about the tribunal, didn't mention his name, didn't gloat. The best revenge wasn't proving him wrong, it was running everything he said I couldn't. Still, there were moments when the past tried to crawl back. Old investors reached out, testing boundaries. "You and Ethan made such a great team," one of them said over lunch. I smiled politely. "Ethan was the storm," I replied. "I'm what's left when the weather clears." They laughed, not realizing it wasn't a joke. Word spread quickly. By the end of the quarter, 3 new contracts came in, clients who had walked away during the chaos. The press started calling again. I let our PR lead handle it. The headlines came quietly. CEO Elena Ward restores $20M firm to stability after internal shakeup. The words looked sterile on screen, but I liked that. Let them write it like it was simple. The real story was too precise for headlines anyway. At home, my life shrank into something smaller but more honest. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment overlooking the river. No designer furniture, no curated art. Just books, quiet, and light. Every night, I made tea and sat on the balcony, watching the water reflect the city lights. Sometimes, I'd think about Ethan not with anger, but with distance. The truth was, I didn't hate him anymore. Hatred is a tether, and I'd spent enough of my life tied to him. I realized that he hadn't really stolen from me. He'd given me a lesson I couldn't have bought. That power and peace are 2 sides of the same coin, and you can't hold both unless you let go of approval. The company thrived in my stillness. People started describing my leadership as calm, deliberate, efficient. They didn't know that calm had been forged through betrayal, that every steady tone was a scar rehealed. Rachel visited sometimes, always with that same knowing half-smile. "You know," she said one evening as we reviewed contracts, "most people would have sold the company after all that." I looked up from the papers. "And leave before I enjoy what I built." She laughed quietly. "Fair point." Before she left that night, she paused at the door. "Ethan's in London now. Trying to start something new. Small venture fund." I nodded. "Good." I said simply. I meant it. Let him build. Let him learn what it's like when no one shows up to rescue you. One Friday evening, long after the staff had gone, I walked through the office, lights dimmed, the city humming faintly below. I stopped by the boardroom, the same one where it all started, and ran my fingers across the edge of the table. The new one, sleek walnut. Custom built after we'd remodeled. The old table had been replaced months ago, but sometimes, in quiet moments, I swore I could still hear echoes of that first meeting, the paper sliding across the surface, the claws missing, the breath catching in my throat. I wasn't angry anymore. That version of me, the one who needed to be seen, who mistook loyalty for security, she'd burned away the moment I walked out of that room. What remained wasn't a woman rebuilt, it was a woman revealed. I walked over to the window, the city lights stretching like constellations below, and took a deep breath. The reflection staring back was older now, eyes a little heavier, but steadier. People always talk about winning as if it's loud, as if it ends with applause. But the truth is, victory sounds like peace. It's quiet. It's the absence of fear when you open your laptop. It's the steady heartbeat when you sign your own checks. It's the morning coffee that tastes better because no one can take it away. I realized something else that night, that power isn't about controlling others, it's about no longer needing their permission to exist. When I left the office, the cleaning staff nodded to me, respectful but warm. They didn't call me ma'am or CEO. They just said, "Have a good night, Miss Ward." I smiled, meaning it. Outside, the rain had started again, soft against the pavement, the same kind of rain that had fallen the day I won everything back. I tilted my face up for a second, letting it fall across my skin, cool and light. And for the first time, I didn't think about the boardroom or the betrayal or the numbers on the balance sheet. I thought about the first night I'd signed my name on a business license 10 years ago, hand trembling, eyes full of belief. The same name still mattered. The same belief had survived. Only now, I understood its cost and its worth. Back home, I poured myself one last glass of wine and opened my journal, something I hadn't done in years. I wrote one line across the top of the page. He tried to erase me, but I was written in ink that doesn't fade. Then I closed it, turned off the lights, and let the silence stretch around me, warm, earned, and mine.